Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our press briefing. Today, we invited Mr. Shu Nakagawa, Director, Secretariat for the 6th Tokyo International Conference on African Development, TICAD 6, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Nakagawa will talk about the conference, which will be held in Nairobi, Kenya, on August 27th and 28th. Let me kindly ask you to turn your mobile phones to the silent mode, please. Then, Mr. Nakagawa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. As I introduced, my name is Nakagawa, Director of Second Africa Division, that covers mainly eastern and southern part of Africa, and also I'm in charge of the managing the whole TICAD process. So please let me briefly give you an explanation of what would be a focus of this TICAD 6 and what would be discussed in this TICAD. So we've distributed a paper that is titled the 6th Tokyo International Conference on African Development. So I'd like to brief you in line with this distributed paper. Please open the first page, and on point 1, this is the title, the first TICAD to be held in Africa. TICAD process started in 1993, just after the end of the Cold War, and the first meeting was held in 1993, and since then, the TICAD have been held once in 5 years in Japan, and the last two TICAD, TICAD 4 and 5, were held in Yokohama. And the last one, TICAD 5, was held in June 2013 in Yokohama. And we adopted the Yokohama Declaration and the Yokohama Action Plan, in which Japan, African countries, and all the participating partners, including traditional donors, international organizations, civil societies, committed to do this, and do this. And in line with that, Prime Minister Abe announced Japan's commitment for coming 5 years in Yokohama, which is shown in the distributed paper in 1, 2, 3, 4, like fifth and sixth pages. And in any case, at that time, we've already got a request from African side that the next TICAD should be held in Africa, since Africa is an equal partner. And eventually we accepted the proposal from Africa. And also there was a opinion from African side that 5 years interval is too long, and other similar forums like Africa, China, Africa, Korea, Africa, EU, etc., are generally held once in 3 years. So eventually we end up with a sort of agreement between African side and Japan to hold a TICAD in 3 years after Yokohama, I mean this year. And then the next TICAD will be held accordingly in 2019 in Japan. So, and the host country was decided through discussion among African countries, and Kenya became a candidate and eventually became a host country. Then, point 2, main agenda and discussion points. In this TICAD 6 is, in a sense, held in the middle of the commitments made by all the participants of TICAD 5, where everybody committed to take actions for incoming 5 years. And in the third year, this TICAD 6 comes. So the general consensus is Yokohama Declaration and Yokohama Action Plan will survive until 2017. In this TICAD 6, the general consensus is we will focus on sort of emerging challenges in Africa since TICAD 5, as shown in this paper. The other is, one is decline of global primary commodity prices. And second one is outbreak of Ebola virus disease and vulnerability of health systems. The third one is spread of radicalization and terrorism. As perhaps many of you are aware, the decline of global primary commodity prices negatively affects also African economy, especially to those countries which heavily rely on the exportation of their sort of primary commodity, such as oil or minerals. So this is an issue that should be urgently addressed. And second one, the outbreak of Ebola virus. Yes, this is quite new to everybody's memory. And it's also discussed in G7 International Summit. So it's urgent issue that how we to discuss how we can improve the health system as a whole in Africa. And third one, spread of radicalization. We've seen tragic terrorist attacks and incidents in, for example, Kenya and Nigeria in 2014 and 15. And this is also an issue which we couldn't really predict as TICAD 5 in 2013. And of course, there should be no opposition that this is an urgent issue to be solved. So these three issues are the sort of main agenda of this TICAD 6. And also, aside from that, also an issue from economic side, and which is common in these three issues, are how we can promote private sector's sort of activities and investment in Africa. And well, the attention of Japanese private sector toward Africa has been rising in these years, and also it's there's a strong sort of request from African side to increase Japanese investment to Africa. Therefore, this time, Japanese companies will participate in all sessions in TICAD for the first time in the TICAD history. And 77 companies, and also that includes some groups and universities. But a total 77 entities will accompany Prime Minister Abe as a so-called business mission. And that is quite a large number. Usually, the Prime Minister's business mission, so-called business missions, amounts, well, usually 30 to 40 companies. So this is quite big delegations. On the next page, so what would be a concrete sort of issues to be discussed to address the three new challenges? One is to cope with the decline of global primary commodity prices. The sort of issues to be discussed among leaders of Japan, Africa, and also other participants would be how we can, promote investment in, promote structural economic transformation through economic diversification, because the decline of the economy of those natural resource-rich countries, primarily due to their heavy sort of dependence to the exportation of the primary commodities. So naturally, the one solution, perhaps a very useful solution, would be economic transformation and diversification. Therefore, the issues to be discussed among leaders would be how we can promote quality infrastructure, such as geothermal power generation, and also how we better sort of develop human resources. On the second issue, as for the promotion of resilient health systems, there will be two sides. One is how we can improve sort of our capacity, African capacity to respond to health crisis. And another aspect will be how we can promote a universal health coverage. As for the third issue, that is about how we can tackle the spread of radicalization and terrorism. The issues to be discussed under this agenda would be, how we can promote social stability for shared prosperity. That is, for example, the human resource development through vocational training, or disaster risk reduction, food security, and others. And perhaps the issues such as how we can, empower the youth and women, or how we can strengthen the institutions of national authorities should be the sort of matters to be discussed in TICAD 6. And then next page, Japan's commitment. We are now working on the so-called outcome document of this TICAD 6. That will be called Nairobi Declaration, which address these three issues and says African countries, Japan, and all the partners, including international organizations, civil societies, and the participating business sectors, will do this to tackle with these three challenges. Then, Japan will also make a commitment how Japan will support African countries in addressing these three issues. So Nairobi Declaration is, actually the owner of Nairobi Declaration is all the participants of TICAD 6. And in line with that, Japanese Prime Minister will announce how Japan will support the African countries with specific sort of figures and numbers. So in line with those three priority areas of Nairobi Declaration, Japan will commit to the three areas, and by utilizing its strong points, including human resource development. So the general sort of content of a announcement that it's supposed to be announced by a prime minister. One is how Japan promotes economic diversification and industrialization, and Japan considers itself as being good at promoting a quality infrastructure, and that is also we provoked at the G7 Ise-Shima summit, and also integrated in G7 Ise-Shima principles. And also our commitment, Japanese government's commitment will be promoting private sector's activities through human resource development and enhanced productivities. And as for the second agenda, the building resilient health systems, our commitment will be building upon G7 Ise-Shima vision, and the content will be such as Japan will commit itself to increase capacity of African countries to respond to the health crisis, and also promote universal health coverage in Africa. And as for third agenda, the promotion of social stability for shared prosperity, our commitment will be, to build foundation for peace and stability through measures such as providing education, vocational training for the youth. That is also kind of our strong points. Then the rest of pages are just for your reference. So it's explaining what is who are the organizers of TICAD and what is the uniqueness of TICAD. And in this part, perhaps what I should mention is these participants. TICAD is not only Japan's forum. We have co-organizers. That is Japan, United Nations, UNDP, African Union Commission, AUC, and World Bank. All the issues to arranging this TICAD meeting, such as the agenda or topics or how we proceed, process, etc., firstly discussed among co-organizers, and only with the consensus of co-organizers we moved on. So, and also as for participants, it's not a Japan-Africa bilateral meeting. It's a multilateral meeting. So the participants varies from African countries to representatives from development partner countries, Asian countries, international regional organizations, private sectors, and CSOs. For example, in this TICAD 6, around 70 international organizations such as, for example, UNHCR, WFP, WHO, and global funds, etc., will participate in TICAD 6. So the one very unique characteristics of TICAD is it's a very inclusive and open forum. The atmosphere of TICAD is something quite similar to like General Assembly of United Nations. And so the number of participants are quite large. In TICAD 5 in 2013, we had 4,500 participants. And in TICAD 6, we are not really have an exact figure at this moment, but Kenyan government estimated once that the total number should be somewhere around 6,000 to 7,000. It's what I'd like to stress is it's an open forum. So as it's written down on the paper, the uniqueness of TICAD. Yeah, it's this is one very unique characteristics, which is very much different from other similar forums. And in your paper also, there's a fact sheet that shows Japan have steadily implementing what we committed in last TICAD, I mean TICAD 5. And after 3 years, we've already spent resources of around 67%. This is out of 3 years, during 3 years out of 5 years. So also one sort of uniqueness or strong point of TICAD process is this sort of reporting system. So we commit something like we do this in this coming 5 years using several $100 million, etc. But we follow up how we really implement this. I mean, Japanese government implement this and report back to African countries. So this process, commitment, follow up, and reporting back is also we consider a unique process and beauty of TICAD process. So I finish my explanation here, and.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nakagawa. Now we would like to open the floor to questions. Due to the very tight schedule of Mr. Nakagawa, we'd like to finish this briefing session at 2:45. So you have about 20 minutes for Q&A session. If you have we receive questions from the foreign press. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and if designated, please wait for a microphone and give us your name and affiliation before you ask your question. Any questions? Yes, please. 一番前。
Shingo Ito from AFP. On the page 2, discussion on the promoting private sector investment in Africa. As I read, the Japanese government is regarding private sector's role as important. But could you tell us what the Japanese government can do for this to promote private sector's investment in Africa?
Thank you very much. Well, the Japanese government have been making certainly some effort to promote Japanese promote Japanese investment toward Africa. One example is, for example, we've been arranging a so-called business mission to visit African countries every year for these 8 years since TICAD 4. And every year, the group of Japanese business people, mainly from Japanese big companies, either trading companies or industries, comprises of 40-50 people to visit several African countries in that trip. That is one, and also we've been holding a sort of regular meeting with business people, in which we would provide sort of information relating to the sort of business, and also listen from our business side of the request, either to Japanese government or to African countries. And also, not only a foreign ministry, but for example, Ministry of METI and JETRO is also making efforts. And for example, in this, it was July, and JETRO newly opened the office in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and JETRO is committed to hold 10 branches in Africa in very near future. Maybe their commitment is at least by 2018. And also we solicited the participation of 77 companies in this TICAD 6 as a Prime Minister's business mission. And this is also one opportunity we can offer to those business people to get used to Africa, and also have a sort of opportunity for business matching, and also the opportunity to appeal what they can do for the development of Africa in front of leaders from all over Africa. Of course, it's not easy task, and especially Japanese, companies' ordinary behaviors were rather cautious. But we've been, also, I would say in daily basis in many African countries, embassy staff as well as JETRO people have been supporting the daily activities of Japanese business people in Africa. So we've been trying our best to promote Japanese business activities in Africa through those means. And also, we are committed to strengthen our effort.
Any other questions? Belda-san. Can you use the microphone?
Yes, sorry. My name is Patrick Walter. I'm with the German newspaper Frankfurter Allgemeine. If you talk to some Africans, at least, some kind of free market-oriented Africans, and I talked to some of these people in Kenya and in Tanzania, they have the very general critique concerning foreign development aid, that they say, keep out this money because it only leads to corruption. And we need to change our countries as such, and the countries have to change from the inside. And they say that the history of development aid is in the end was prolonging poverty in Africa because it only leads to political corruption. What is the Japanese attitude to that?
Thank you very much. Certainly, we are very aware that well, corruption is more or less widely seen in some countries in Africa. And for example, as you mentioned, Kenya, the Kenyan president is very much committed to wipe out all the corruptions among the governments, and we appreciate his efforts. When we use our taxpayers' money through ODA to African countries, of course we are carefully watching that this money be used properly without and certainly we need to also support those government's own efforts to tackle with their corruption. So of course we support their efforts, and we are very careful about how our taxpayers' money be used in those countries, and also Japanese business people are also very much strict in their sort of behavior, as they as we are all buy into dark rules concerning corruption. Rather, our concern is some countries are not really tied to this international society's general rule of prohibition of corruption, and the corruption. The responsibility of the corruption should lie on both sides, the side recipient and also the person who give those, such as bribery. So we really strongly expect that those, African countries' own effort to tackle the corruption will be successful, and also wish that all the, for example, donor country would abide by this general international rules of prohibition of any corruption.
Any other questions? Yes.
AFP again. You said there are some similar forums between Africa and other countries like England and China. Could you tell us what's the strong point of Japan or Japanese government or Japanese businesses? Or could you tell us differences between Japan's support and that of other countries?
Thank you very much. Please see this reference page that is from the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th page, and here there's a column titled "Uniqueness of TICAD." So as I mentioned, the inclusiveness and openness of this forum is the sort of main difference from other forums, such as FOCAC, that is a forum between Africa and China. So the TICAD is, run by co-organizers that are, United Nations, UNDP, that is, one of the biggest donor in Africa, and the African themselves, that is represented by AUC and the World Bank. Also, this is another one of the biggest, international organizations who committed to and give resources to Africa. So. With this, TICAD is not a forum where Japan does only Japan want to do, or the forum where Japan pursue its own economic objective. Rather, here with this large variety of participants, and also a participation from those sort of big, several quite big sort of partners of Africa, including UNDP and World Bank, which is also the international organizations. We consider this as a very much a sort of strong point of TICAD. The Nairobi Declaration that will eventually be, adopted in the end of this TICAD 6 are the, outcome of a discussion and collaboration among all those, wide variety of participants. And also another strong point of TICAD is, this is also I mentioned, this steady follow-up process where, Japan will report how much Japan implemented what the Japan are committed. So for example, I remember that when we had a ministerial follow-up meeting in Cameroon in 2014, that is a ministerial meeting where the participants, ministers level, we will discuss how we follow up the commitment made at the TICAD 5. And there we have several opinions from African side that one of the beauty of this TICAD process is, Japan certainly share how much has been implemented, and what should be done more, etc., etc. So this, so steady fulfillment of promises, as shown in this column, is also and this reporting sort of, systematic reporting. Holding a meeting for reporting is also, I think, a strong point of TICAD process.
Thank you, Joël Legendre from the French radio and television. Regarding the measures to assume good governance and fight against the spreading of terrorism, I see that, for example, in Nigeria, you have spent some money for helping the very poor people, but the amount is quite limited. I think it's $500,000 or something like that. What can we expect exactly? I mean, you're very much involved in Africa already. You brought many people, and you train people in Congo or other countries, police. What can we expect this year in this regard because of the spread of terrorism? I think of Boko Haram. Nigeria is a country which has done a lot recently against Boko Haram, but the authorities of Nigeria have been quite tough and harsh. There is a report on New York Times on that today about the way they've been dealing with those who were hostages of Boko Haram. So how can you explain us what you're going to expect from this year's summit in terms of this issue of security and governance? Thank you.
Thank you very much. This TICAD process actually, this is a forum to discuss about development. But why we discuss about this, spread of terrorism here? Because the spread of extremism and tolerance is a sort of hindrance to the development of Africa. And certainly we need to address how we can tackle this issue. And as you know, of course, Japan is not a country who can send, its military or troops to Africa. The issue should focus in how we can address the root causes. And perhaps there will be no objection that to improve, for example, education for small children, and also give a vocational training to youth, will in the end contribute for the prevention of terrorism or extremism. As we see the current tragic news of terrorist attacks or incidents happening in all over the world. Those terrorists said to be recruited from those poor families in those, especially in some Middle East or African countries. So we consider it very urgent urgent issue to be addressed. And what Japan especially can do better is we consider the human resource development and cooperation with in that aspect. So as I explained, one of Japan's commitments should center around the promotion of social stability that is could be achieved by through measures such as education, vocational training for youth, etc. Did I answer your question?
Any other questions? I'd like to receive one final question, if you have any. If there's no more questions, I'd like just one question. Okay.
AFP again. On the reference, last time, 51 countries, African countries, including 39 heads of states, attended TICAD 2013. But I think nothing has been announced yet. But could you tell us who is likely to attend, like Zimbabwe's Mugabe or others?
We've give an invitation, of course, to all the African countries, and now we are sort of correcting the answer. But this maybe it's too early to tell who's coming and who's not. We are expecting that many leaders would attend this meeting. So, that's for sure.
Okay, as the time is up, we'd like to close today's press briefing. Thank you very much, Mr. Nakagawa.
Thank you very much.